Good morning. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Diana. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you need me to turn up the sound. Oh, good. Thank you, Bobby. Okay, great. Nancy, I'll be very happy to answer any of your questions. I used to have an ovation, so that's great. And I still own my Triumph, although my video editor has it. Hello from New Hampshire, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Portland. Oh, good. Everybody's coming in here. Everybody's right on time. We love that. Rainy Green Bay. Oh, it's actually beautiful in Connecticut, but chilly, chilly. Oh, that's my sister calling. I have to call her back. Good morning from Topeka. Hello? Oh, hang on a second. I think. Barb, can I call you back? Yeah. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, from Berkeley, Topeka. Let's see, good. Sound is good. Great. Good. I hope everybody's doing well. We've had a chilly May so far, but I think it's supposed to eventually warm up in Nevada. Oh, Minden. Oh, okay. Hi, Susan. Yeah, Berkeley. Gosh, everybody's Redmond. Yay. We'll give everybody a minute. How's everybody doing? Anybody doing anything extra fun and special, or even just very mundane and but still great on their sergers or sewing machines? I'm open to both. I'm very happy to hear about your sewing things. So, I had a delightful time out at 35th Avenue in Phoenix, Arizona a couple of weeks ago. That was really just a great event. And I met a couple of women who drove in from Utah, and they were staying at the same hotel as me. And we got to have dinner together a couple of nights, which was very, very nice. Hey, from Ohio. Thanks for joining. So anyway, that was really good. I will Waukesha. Oh, Bobby from Chile, Waukesha. Yeah, it is right now. It's only 59 in Connecticut. It's been pretty nippy. There have been days when I've gone out with a little bit heavier spring jacket on and not been overly warm with it too. So. I'm just waiting for the warm weather, but before you know it, we'll be complaining about that too, or I will be. Anyway, so, but you can see I've been walking, and even with sunblock on, I can see way more freckles. When I put on the camera, I was like, wow, they really do show up on camera. And when I was a kid, before I started wearing sunscreen, I have a lot of freckles on my face too, but they've kind of faded away. But anyway, so today we are going to be talking about humps and bumps and how to get over them and keep your stitching nice and smooth, keep the stitch length even and consistent, and talk about how to avoid any problems of getting stuck on the corners. And the reason I thought about it was because when I did the last tip clip, oh, Sherry, you just got a Triumph. Congratulations. Good for you. That's great. The last time I did a tip clip on the chain stitching next to the binding. Somebody said, what does the corner look like? And I'm going to show you today because I got a little bit hung up on the corner because of not using a hump jumper or a height compensation tool. So I'm going to show you that. Hey, from Montreal. Kim says she loves this topic. Yeah. I mean, I could be talking about lumps and bumps on me too, but we'll just keep it to the Serger today. But let me just do my little disclaimer at the beginning. As you all know, I am a proud Bernina ambassador, but I do not work for Bernina and I do not receive any commission on sales of machines, software, anything else. However, if you are in the market for a new machine, whether it's a Bernina or Bernette or software, any purchase of $1,000 and up, you are eligible for an ambassador appreciation coupon. And this is eligible in the United States only because it is from Bernina of America. And what this is a $100 check that you will receive from Bernina. The only thing you have to remember, though, is if you are thinking about purchasing a new machine or software, please shoot me an email before you make the purchase, and with your mailing address included, and I'll pop one of these into the mail for you. But you have to have this prior to the sale. It's not retroactive on something you bought last week. So make sure you get that because it is $100 cash. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for Bernina to process these, but they will send you that check for $100, and that is their thank you, number one, for purchasing the machine, for supporting your local dealer or your software, and for watching my videos and helping my cause as well. So again, if you are looking for that, you can shoot me an email. It's gail@gailpatrice.com. So that will I'll be happy to pop one right into the mail for you. If it's not today, it'll definitely be tomorrow or whenever you shoot me an email. So anyway, other than that and traveling, my next stop is going to be Warwick, Rhode Island. So that's a real local one. Warwick is not very far from me in Connecticut. And that will be May 19th for the Rhode Island Sewing Network. And I believe it starts around 7 p.m. It's an evening thing. It's going to be just a short presentation. I think their meetings are only a couple of hours long. But we'd love to see you there. And so if you're interested in that, you can check out their website and see what that is. It's Rhode Island Sewing Network. Also, June 11th and 12th, I will be at Creative Sewing in Geneva, Illinois, which I'm looking forward to. Let's see. Good. Phyllis from Mississippi. Phyllis and Teresa from Texas. Oh, we've got people from all over the place. Thanks for joining. Okay. So I did hit record. So I have a few different ways in which to use a height compensation tool. You may have something that you was called a hump jumper, or I think years ago, and I'm not sure if they're still sold under this name, there used to be a little device or tool called a Genamajig, which was basically also did the same thing. So first of all, I want to show you the corner on the little sample piece that I had posted with the pretty chain stitching next to the binding and show you what happened because I did not use my height compensation tool. So I'm going to switch over to that screen. Okay, here we go. I've got a whole bunch of stuff here to show you. Let me take, these are the two height compensation tools. This one is Bernina's for the overlock side of the 890. And what they've done, which is clever, is they have two different thicknesses. Here is the thinner one. Here is the thicker width. And let me just put it so that you can see both of them together. And you can see that there is a distinct difference between the two thicknesses. And this is the same thing, but for the cover and chain stitch side of your machine, and they've done the exact same thing where it's a 2-for-1 with the thinner side here, thicker over here on the left. So those are those. But I'm going to move all my other samples out of the way for a second here. Here is the sample that I stitched, and you really only saw this part of the stitching. And I realized when I looked at it on camera yesterday, it really isn't quite as distinct on camera as it is in person. And it's really, it's not the worst looking thing on earth. Let me just tell you that. So let's go to the corner. So this is where I started. You can see it was just a sample. I didn't start at the very end. I started down here, went down here. I stopped. I turned the corner. And again, in person, it is much more obvious that the first 3 or 4 stitches are considerably shorter than these stitches. And the machine got a little bit hung up as I went around the corner because I didn't use the height compensation tool. And when you're going around a mitered corner, you can see how much thickness there is from top to bottom with all of the extra layers folded in. Let me see, there would be 2, 3, I think there would be 6 layers of fabric in the corner between the top and the bottom, as opposed to over here where you'd only have 4 because you've got the top fabric, the binding on top, we've got a very lightweight batting in here, the backing, and the so there is a difference. And even though it doesn't seem like it would make that big a difference, obviously when you look at the size of these stitches compared to over here, there is a significant difference. Now, would I have ripped this out if I was doing this on a great big project and had to, pull out the whole thing? Probably not. It's not that bad. If the machine had skipped or kind of really bogged down and created a thread nest, I wouldn't have had a choice. I would have had to pull it out. Fortunately, it was just like a short hiccup, and then it kept on going. So anyway, that is why a height compensation tool works well. And I want to show you a few different times when it comes in handy. And the reason being is that when you're going around a corner on something, and I'm going to show you decorative stitching along the edge, kind of like what I have on the tabletop or right in back of me. It's too far away for you to really see up close. But if you're doing decorative stitching or a situation where you've got a nice binding and you want it to kind of dress it up with one more stitch, this is when having that hump jumper or height compensation tool really will keep your stitches quite uniform. The machine will glide along and move. And why is that? Because when the toe of the foot is on the fabric, and say you're turning a corner, so the heel of the foot is not yet on the fabric, you've got the toe of the foot up high, the heel of the foot is down low. And that's what creates that little bit of a hiccup for the machine, because it has a hard time getting literally over the hump onto the fabric to continue stitching along. And that's where putting a height compensation tool in back will level the back of the foot so that the heel and the toe of the foot are even with each other. And it basically kind of fools the machine or the foot into thinking it's on the fabric, whether the back end of the presser foot is or not. So I'm going to show you that first. I'm going to show you that with a decorative edge. So let's go, and I showed this or I have shown it in a lot of in-person classes when we've done that tabletopper as a project. and people are amazed at how to get a really nice clean corner, because I know sometimes when you're doing decorative stitching along the edge rather than a bound edge with your fabric binding, sometimes the corners look loopy and messy, and you've got extra stitches clumped up on top of each other. Okay. Somebody just asked, will the compensation foot for the L890 help with the side to side height difference? Okay, I'm glad you asked that question, because somebody emailed me not that long ago, like within the last few weeks, saying that she was having a problem. I think she was maybe stitching down some binding or something, where side to side she had extra layers on one side as opposed to the other, and the machine wasn't behaving well. I don't know whether it was an 890 or not. No, this one is, you'll see how I'm using it today. What you need for side to side height compensation is the height compensation foot, and I didn't pull it out, but I can grab it very quickly to show you the difference, because there is a difference. So hang on just a second. I should have pulled it out before, but I know where it is. Hang on a second. Okay, I've got it. All right, I'm going to go to the close-up camera to show you this and how it works, because it's really a cool foot. But for the height compensation tool versus this foot, one is talking kind of vertically, the other one is talking side to side, horizontal differences in the thickness of the fabric. So let me go over here and just show you this. I'm going to move this aside. Okay. So this is the height compensation tool, or excuse me, the height compensation foot. And what it has is, I call them like 3 toes on the foot. And you can see that the center one remains stationary. Let me see if I can show it better like this, I think. Let me move the camera up just so it doesn't go out of focus easily. I think that's better. Okay. So you've got 2 toes, or 3 toes, but 2 of them are movable. So this one, when you're working on fabric, say you're on the thinner part without the binding, this one will drop down to compensate for less thickness on the fabric. If I were going in this direction and stitching, this toe would drop down. The center toe remains stationary. And this is a great little foot for situations like this, because sometimes when you don't have that and you're stitching along, if this foot doesn't, and it will drop down when you've got it on the machine and the presser foot lever is down. But if you don't have this machine, this is where you can run into a little bit of trouble, where the side of the foot that is on the thinner part of the fabric, or layers of fabric, that side of the foot is kind of floating in air. But with this, it'll drop down on the right or the left side. So for side to side height compensation, you want to get that height compensation foot. Okay, good. I'm glad you said that's the foot you're asking about. Does anyone else have a question about that before we move on? And that's a very good distinction. I should have thought of that ahead of time, because that does make a difference. And I did have an email from somebody asking about that. So this is the foot for you, and that is C12, the height compensation foot. I'm not sure whether other brands have a foot that's similar to that, but again, you can check on their website, check with your dealer also. And if you go to their website and you don't see it listed, definitely call the dealer and ask them to look it up for you for accessories. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, but Kim said, "Does Baby Lock have a similar foot?" I'm not sure, but the way you want to check whether you have a Baby Lock, a Juki, Janome, Viking, whatever, is you can go to their website, which would be babylock.com for Baby Lock, Juki.com, etc. What you're going to do is look on their menu of machines. Look for the Serger. Then look for your particular model of Serger. And then typically it'll have a subtitle or a subcategory that will say compatible accessories. And you can look to see what they have for feet and other accessories as well that will go with your particular model of machine. Now, the one thing I will say too is that sometimes there's a little bit of lag time between the availability of some of these feet and getting their websites updated. So again, it doesn't hurt if you don't see it. Call your dealer because they should have the most up-to-date information when new feet and accessories become available. Londa says for a knit binding attachment where you're not using a knit binder, would this be a better foot than the standard? I would, if you're, well, Patria, Pat. Oh, Pat. You're saying that is it foot number 2 can be used on all 8-thread sergers? Is that for Baby Lock? I'm not sure. Oh, okay. I guess that answers. Okay, I see. You're answering Kim's question. Okay, great. All right. So, with that one. But again, you can check, your dealer should have the most up-to-date information. And if they don't have it in stock, most of the time they can special order that for you, no matter what. Okay, and Londa says Baby Lock does have a height compensation foot. Okay, so that answers that mystery. Okie doke. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is using a decorative edge like you see on this one, or let me just show you one that I had a sample stitched out on. And this is just a 3-thread. I think it's like a 3-thread. It's not quite as wide as I usually do. It's probably like a 3-thread 7mm 7mm width stitch. Okay, so this. Now, you can see I don't have any loops hanging off. I don't have any thread nests on this or bunching up of stitches or anything else. It's a nice clean corner, and I'll show you how to do that. So that's the first one that I have. And this, yes, I just have as a 3-thread. I didn't bother putting any backing fabric on that because it was just a sample. So but I'll show you how to get a nice clean corner, and I did show this in in-person classes. So but before we get started, let me just make sure. Sherry's saying I froze, but that was earlier. I'm assuming I'm unfrozen now. And I think sometimes it can be, I know the last time I think we did the live, there was some flashing on the screen. And sure enough, when I went out later in the day, there were crews working and digging up different parts of the street, and they were putting down wires and stuff like that. So I think that was why that was going on. So hopefully that's all finished and taken care of. All right, so I'm going to go to the machine. This is just a little sample. Pam said you love my nails. Oh, well, thank you, Pam. That's always nice to hear. Okay, so this is just a little sample. I have fabric on the front and back. This is similar to what you would be doing, say, on a wall hanging or a tabletop or anything else. I have OESD Fusion Fleece underneath, which is a very lightweight, fusible fleece. It's not super thick. So I have got my machine. Let me go to the screen. I am set up for a 3-thread overlock wide. I have my left overlock needle in. I'm keeping all of my tensions on the default setting. My left needle is 4, upper looper and lower looper are 4. I have my stitch length on 1.4, and that's so that I get good coverage. But again, it's not so short that my machine is going to get hung up. So let's go back to the foot. And I have a white, excuse me, a white spaghetti thread, which is Egyptian cotton. It's Wonderful in the upper looper, and I have the same thread, only in more of an orangey coral color in the lower looper, and Serger cone thread in my left needle. So that is my whole setup on that. And let me get my threads out of the way in back. And you know, this is just a very basic thing, but sometimes people leave their thread tails in front of the foot. If you think about your serger, just the way you do your sewing machine, you always pull your threads to the back of the presser foot. You want to do the same thing on your serger as well before you start. If they're in front or they're just kind of hanging down and sort of inside where the loopers are, you don't want that, because then you're going to be busy trying to pick them out, and you don't want to get a tangle in there either. So just bring your threads to the back and make them long enough, especially with 12 and 8 weight threads, that you can hang on to them as the machine gets going. And this is something when I demo how to use decorative threads for anyone who's new, I always say, hold on to those threads for the first 2, 3, or 4 stitches in the fabric that the machine is taking. So let's go back there again. Okay, so my presser foot is up right now. I'm going to get this in under, put my presser foot down, and I'm going to hold my thread tails with the 2 12 weights. That's important. I'm going to let the knife just skim off any little whiskers or threads on the edge. I don't have to take off any on this. It's just a sample. And typically, if I'm doing something like a tabletop, or also, I have already trimmed the project fabric down to close to the size that I want for a finished product. I've got my seam guide on here. So I'm holding this. Okay. Now my fabric is cooking along. On the first edge, I really don't have to be too concerned about the height compensation. I'm going to just chain off, and I'm going to cut my fabric. And I do have some tips here. So let me go back to the other camera just to show you how to get prepped for that second side. I'm just moving everything else out of the way. Putting my little height compensation tool. Okay, so let me go back to this one. All right, so here we have, I probably could have made my stitch a tiny bit shorter, but this is fine for a sample. 1.4, I probably could have gone down to 1.3. All right, so here are my beginning threads. I am going to cut these off right next to the edge of the fabric. And because this edge would be covered as I go along when I go to do that last edge up here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing over here. I'm going to cut these threads even with the fabric. And I'm not going to worry about will they unravel, because the next side that I'm going to go down is this side. And so to compensate with two 12-weight threads, you wouldn't think that it's adding a whole lot of extra bulk to the edge, but it's not adding a ton, but it's adding enough that you do want to use that little height compensation tool or hump jumper. The reason I trimmed these off is because I don't want little tails and excess thread under my next line of stitching. I want it to look super neat and clean. So I've trimmed that off, and let's go back to the machine. Okay, so there are just a few steps. It's nothing complicated at all. The first thing I do is I raise the presser foot, which is already up. Now, you can see, let me move my presser foot out of the way. You can see there are stitches still on my stitch finger back here. I want to clear the threads from the stitch finger. Super easy to do. All I do is grab my thread tail and pull back. Now, let me just show you. I'm going to take the foot right off so that you can really see what I'm talking about. All right, so now you can see nothing, no stitches here. And that's really important because that's going to help you get a super clean finish on these corners. And we're always looking to up our game on things and get things that look super, super nice. And when people look at the projects and they look at the corners, that's really so important to get a really nice look. So let me put my presser foot back on. I've cleared those threads. I'm pulling those thread tails straight back. Get this underneath. Put my, oops, that's not caught. There we go. Okay, now it is. Get my thread tails under here. Now, here is my overlock height compensation tool. And I'm going to use the thicker end because the thin end isn't quite thick enough. You can see that there is a little bit of thickness to that. I don't think this is, let me see if I can get a better focus on this. Hang on. You can see there is some thickness. Now, there are a couple of different ways to use this, which is really clever. The traditional way to use it would be by putting it in back just like this. And these little ridges or ledges act kind of like back stops and side stops. You can see when I put the presser foot down, well, no, you can't really because of the side. Let me move my camera and see if, or let me move the machine and see if you can see it from the side. Let me get this down. Yeah, you can see the foot fits in. It's almost like putting your foot in a shoe, where the heel of the shoe is right against the back of the foot and the side of your shoe is right against the side of your foot. Just like that. But what I'm going to do, and I'll tell you why. Let me turn this around. This is not super traditional, but guess what? It works. I'm going to turn it like this. Now, the reason being is that if I have this little leg that sits along the side, I can't get my fabric right on top of it. I guess I could, but I just find it a little bit handier to turn the height compensation tool, the hump jumper, sideways a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this edge right up in front of my needles. I'm going to turn my hand wheel, bring my needle down, and let me just get I'm trying to see if I can get the very best angle on this now that I've switched everything around. I think we're good. Okay. Is that good for everybody? I can't tell. Okay, so I've got my needle down. I'm lifting that toe of the presser foot. And I'm bringing that starting edge right up to that needle. And I know it's right up to the needle because the needle is down, and that's why I put it down. Now, I've still got to deal with my thread tail in back here. I'm going to get this hump jumper. And the thing that you want to be careful of is you don't want to move the hump jumper so far forward that it is in the way of that upper looper that comes up and over the fabric. You need it back just a smidge. So I'm going to hold my thread tails. I'm going to grab this. And sometimes when the hump jumper goes out from under the foot as you advance forward, it can make a real clunk. So just be prepared for that, because the first time I used it and it did that, it really, it kind of startled me. So I'm going to hold my thread tails. My fabric is right against the needle. And I'm not trimming off any fabric. I'm just skimming off the whiskers. Here's my knife right here. Okay, so let's get going. And I'll just chain off. And now, oh, this is really nice. I'm going to raise the presser foot, pull this off. And you know, another thing, while I'm talking about that, about raising the presser foot, I like to raise the presser foot when I'm done with something like decorative stitching, simply because if you pull it and the presser foot is down and you're just chaining off with it down, sometimes what it can happen is it can tighten those last 3 or 4 stitches, and then to get them back nice and smooth and flat again can be a little bit of an issue. So let's take a look at this under the close-up camera and see what we have. Okay, so here we go. Look at that, smooth as can be. So then what am I doing next? If this is the right side, here's the underside. You can see that one looks equally as good. What I'm going to do is, and I know I had my, yes, here it is. Here we go. Okay, so I have my double-eyed needle. If you have a bodkin, you can certainly use that too. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to give the thread chain or tail a gentle pull just to skinny it down. And I don't need all this length. I'm just going to cut it right about here and leave about maybe 2 inches. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to ease my double-eyed needle with the rounded end so that I don't get any snags on my stitching underneath either. I'm going to pull it forward. I am going to, and this is probably the most complicated thing, getting all of those thread tails in there. And then I'm going to pull it under, and I kind of hold that end again so that I don't pull too hard. I want to do the snug tug there just to get it nice and tidy. And then what I can do is carefully just snip that end, and let's look at it from the top. Look how nice that looks. It's clean as it was like. Probably could have pulled, no, I guess it's fine. But that corner is super nice and clean. It's a 90-degree angle. I didn't blunt anything or distort the corner at all. And again, that's what that hump jumper will do for this type of a situation. Let me go back to me for just a second. Okay, so when you don't lift the foot. Oh, okay. Oh, Bobby says she gets startled every time. Yes, what we're talking about is sometimes when you do have that hump jumper, it is plastic. And when it's got the pressure of the presser foot against it, once the foot or the fabric advances enough and this slides out from under the foot, sometimes it can make a real bang when the foot goes down, and as I say, the first time it just startled me like crazy, and I think it actually went flying across my sewing studio. So just be prepared for that. So I just want to show you another one. I'm not going to do every single technique because let's not bore you with that, but I'm going to show you another one that's more of a practical thing that you would use on garments as well. But here is one where I did use the height compensation tool, and you can see that the corner stitches and the first 3 stitches on the second line are nice and even. So that is the difference between that one versus the one that I showed here. And as I say, it is more obvious in person than it is on the screen. But you do have those little tiny stitches right here as compared to here. Oh, Kim says, yeah, thanks for the tip about lifting the foot. Yes. And on those corners, let me go back to me. On those corners, you do want to be gentle. Don't yank really hard on those. Chain off enough that you're not putting any tension on the thread chain after you've stitched that long edge. Just cut it, leave it be, and then trim those. And also the other thing is that when you, let me move these out of the way so I can go back here a second. When you've already trimmed off those beginning stitches, you don't see any twirls of the thread underneath, like a little bit of a thread nest that you're covering up. Also, it minimizes the chances of adding any extra bulk on that corner as well. So there are a lot of good reasons. It takes longer to talk you through the process than actually doing it as you're working on a project. So they all work, and they all work together to give you that super clean, nice, perfect looking corner. So those are just a few tips on that one. And on this one, since I just did go back, if I were coming down here, I would do the same thing. I would trim these right up to the edge of the fabric. And I think I just nicked my finger too, but I don't think it's bleeding. But I would trim those and then follow it down. So all of those little tidbits of information really will give you a really nice finish with that. But the star of that whole technique is the height compensation tool, just to help you get going, get over the hump of starting over the fabric. And actually, I had another sample here, and this one is a very good example. It was something that I had done around the holidays with metallic 12-weight thread. Hang on a second. Let me just see if I have it over here. Yes. And I think I was just making a sample, so I didn't bother tucking in any of the tails. But this is using the twice as nice stitch and going around the corner. And the twice as nice stitch, as you know, I've got a tip clip on that. That is just a variation of the 3-thread wide that I just did, where I have tweaked the upper and lower looper tensions to get those 2 pieces. So here it is. And with the 12-weight thread, I think you can see that does add a considerable amount of bulk on the corner. Also, because the lower looper is pulled to the top, you're dealing with a little bit more of a ridge where the upper and lower looper threads meet each other in the double band of color. So that makes it very important to do as well. And if you are using, say, an 8-weight thread for your edging, even more important. The thicker the thread and the thicker the edge, the more you need that height compensation tool to keep that foot level. Oh, yeah. Now, again, the comment was, I love your tip of positioning the tool sideways on the back. Yes, but the thing that you want to be conscious of is that you don't have it so far forward that the upper looper can't move and go up and down. And the best way to check that is don't step on the gas, turn the hand wheel. And if you find there's interference, move that hump jumper back a little bit more. Okay. Okay. Shirley is saying, how would I use it when hemming and approaching a seam? Well, guess what I have set for our next technique? I have got a little sample of knit fabric and I've done a 3-thread seam on that, and we're going to talk about that. Now, I do have a tip clip on this in full, showing it all done step by step, but I am going to walk you through that because this is a time when using the hump jumper really, really makes a big difference. And again, I've said it a million times that would your non-sewing friends notice the difference on a side seam that you've gone over with a cover stitch to hem your top or your tunic or dress or anything else? Would they notice if the stitches were irregular and wiggly and got really tiny? Probably not. But would your sewing friends? Absolutely. They would know that. And they would also notice if everything looked nice and straight and even. And I had shown this also in the Edgy Edges class, part 3, that was dealt with cover and chain stitching too. But I do have a full tip clip when I think it's called Perfect Cover Stitching Over Seams. So let's take a look. I'm going to move some of this stuff aside, but are there any questions before I put all of this aside for you? That was showing it using decorative edges and that type of thing. But now I really want to show you something that for garment construction, because everybody struggles with some of the little detail, or many people struggle with some of the little details that don't seem super, super important, but it's frustrating if you're somebody who's really looking to raise your level of expertise and get that really perfect finish on that. So I'm going to move these aside. I don't see any questions coming in on that. So let me get these out of the way. And first I want to show you the prep for this. And I'm going to have to convert my machine over also. And where did my hump jumper go that was for overlock? It's probably in back of my machine. As I said, it flies around, but I'll find it after we're all done. Okay, so let me go back to here and show you the prep that you want to do. And again, please keep in mind that walking you through the steps is a longer process than doing them. So don't feel like, ugh, this is going to take me all day to finish these. No, it's not. And once you've done it 2 or 3 times, it'll become so fast and automatic, you won't even think about it anymore. So let's go to the screen. I'm going to put this off. Okay, so this is just a knit fabric. It's a medium weight. It's got a little bit of body and heft to it. And what I've done is I have turned up a 1-inch hem. This is the SSI Knit Stay Tape. This is a great product to use. It's excellent whether you're using woven fabrics, like say a rayon challis that's lightweight, very drapey, a lightweight cotton, or knit fabrics. I just love SSI Knit Stay Tape. This is it right here. I have it in black or white. On something that's fairly hefty like this, will the black show through? Here's the right side. Absolutely not. So I've got it upside down. Let me just show you right side up. Here's the hem. You can't even see it through this. So the black or the white is great. Okay, so let's take a look at how to prep this. This is my pretend side seam, okay? I did a 3-thread on that. And then I did a couple of things, and I hope you can see through. This is a 1-inch with hem. What I did was I made a snip in the seam allowance up to, but not through the needle thread, which is this thread right here, okay? You don't want to cut your needle thread because that will open up the seam. That is a no-no. But you're going to cut right to. And then for quilters, you're very familiar with flipping the seam allowance to the opposite side. Like when you're putting 1/4-inch seams together, you don't typically put the seam allowance on top of each other. You flip one to one side, one to the other side. So I have flipped that to the opposite side underneath here. I think you can see it. And I gave it a press to make it stay put. Then, and typically I do this prior to putting the stay tape on, but I didn't know how well it would show up on camera. What I do next is I trim off that seam allowance for where my hem is going to be. I just clip that off because if you think about it, when you do not do any of these steps, let's count how many layers we're going to go through. So if you did this, you have your hem up, you have your public side of the garment. Here, we're on the wrong side, but here's the public side. There's one. There are 2 layers of fabric in the seam allowance. So that's 1, 2, 3. Then you've got the hem turned up, that's 4. And then you've got the seam allowance on the inside, again, that if I didn't flip it, it would be on top of this. You would be going through 6 layers of fabric on that seam allowance as opposed to just 2, and that doesn't count the stay tape. And that SSI knit stay tape is very sheer. You heard me say this in other classes too. It's like magic. I just love this stuff because it gives your hems a nice finish. It adds just a whisper more of weight to the hem as well, but it also just makes it look so nice. And it's kind of hard to see on camera. But if you looked at one without the stay tape and one with the stay tape in person, you could definitely see a distinct difference. So, all right, so let's go through that. So I've got my seam allowance pressed. I clipped right at the line. If you're doing a 1/2-inch seam or a 1/2-inch hem, you'd clip it down at the 1/2-inch mark. Flip the seam allowance to the opposite side. If you wanted it, if you're pressing it and it kept flipping back or anything, you could always use either a touch of wash away glue, make sure it doesn't stain, or you could use a little bit of the double-sided Wonder Tape just to hold it in place. But then when I put the fusible SSI knit stay tape on, that does definitely hold it. So I've got that. That's eliminated 2 layers right there. Then I've made a wedge cut. And again, I have not gone through my needle thread, even though up here, because this is going to be turned up and stitched over, is it going to weaken the seam? No, but I don't like to cut through my needle thread, even though it's not going to really make a difference on the integrity of the stitching. So now we're ready to go. And if you feel this, in comparison to the rest of this, there's really not a lot of difference in the weight. So it's going to really make it much easier to keep your stitch length uniform. And also, if you've done stitching, especially over a knit that's got a little bit of heft to it, sometimes as the toe of your foot approaches that seam allowance, it can actually bump the stitching right off the raw edge and miss it completely. So, and I probably should have cut this a little more accurately. I see a little bit of this, but that's okay. We'll talk about that when we get to the machine. So what I'm going to do is I have to convert my machine over to cover chain stitch, and I'm going to set up for stitch show. Let's either 23 or 24. I'm not using any decorative threads on this, so I'm going to cut all of those off. and I'm going to change my thread color to that royal blue that the seam was done in, just so that you can see it. And hopefully I'll create perfection with that. So let me get this off. And you can all see I've got my little trim bin plus. I've talked about that before. That is Barbara Goldcorn's product. Fantastic. And you can go to Barbara at cuttingedgesergerdesigns.com and order that. I don't sell it. It's fantastic though. It's great because it's got that little added compartment where you can throw your clips, your pins. If you were changing presser feet and you wanted to get them out of the way, I think I mentioned before that I accidentally threw away one of my plastic feet by accident because I just turned it over and dumped it into the trash. Very annoying. So let me just get this set up. Gotta just get my cover hem table on. I'm gonna pull out my threads. I'm gonna lock maybe I should be showing you what I'm doing here. I am going to lock down my upper looper because that's not part of the equation for cover stitching. Here's my upper looper. If I left that active, I wouldn't be able to shut the table closed. And if it was closed, it would bump the cover hem table off. So I'm turning my hand wheel. Oh, here's my hump jumper. I'm going to put that out of the way. Okay, and I'm going to bring my stitch width dial down to 5. I've got my stitch finger up on O. Now, even though this is on O, this is not part of cover stitching. The only reason you have to leave it on the O is because of this little indentation on the cover hem table. It has to fit in there. If it was on the R, it wouldn't let this door close. So, okay, so let me get this, and I've got to move, I've got to grab another needle. Okay, here we go. I'm just using the ELX 705s. I'm using a 9014 because that's what I have that's handy, and I know that's what's in the machine to begin with. I'm going to do stitch 23, which is a narrow cover stitch. And again, with cover stitching and whoops, I don't think I've got that all the way in. There we go. With cover stitching, if you're getting tunneling on a lightweight knit and you've got your cover stitch set on, say, number 22, a wide cover stitch, switch to a narrow. You're getting a very good view of my hands here. Okay, so let me switch this over. I've got my left and center cover chain stitch needles. And stitches number 23, which is what we're doing now with my left and center needles in, is the exact same stitch as if I had the center and right needles in for stitch number 24. It's just a matter of where the needles are. It is the exact same stitch. So let's switch to the screen. Melanie says, can you show the hump jumper foot, how you would use it not turned so we can see how it rides along the long finger? Yes, I can do that. Okay, so let me just get set up and then I'll flip it back for that, Melanie. Hang on just a second and I will be very happy to do that. So, let me go to the screen. Okay, so now I'm going to select, I know my stitches, so I can use my little shortcuts here. Stitch number 23. Okay, so this is showing, now this is my left chain needle, right chain needle, left and center chain needles, and this is my chain looper. Those are all the default settings, as you know, on this machine. You can just stick with the default settings, or if I had my Thread Fusion on because I was using that yesterday, you can just go with the default settings that the machine will auto set for you if you don't like to play around with your tensions, or you can tweak them for special effects, which you know I love to do. Okay, so I'm just going to put this in. Okay, so that's let me lock down my knife. That's always helpful. And get my needles threaded up. It always takes me a little bit longer so I don't whack the cameras as I'm doing this stuff. Because I wanted to show you the hump jumpers for both overlock and cover stitch. So this is, just bear with me as I get these put in. Okay. Okay, I'm getting my center needle threaded up, and anytime I switch stitches, even if I'm in the same mode, I always like to grab some sample fabric just to test and make sure I've got everything the way I want it to look, and that I'm not going to have any hiccups or boo-boos on the stitching. Okay. I think we're good to go on that. Okay, so Melanie, you wanted to see how this looks. I'm going to lower that. I'm going to lower that exposure a little bit more. I think it's kind of glary. Okay, so here is this. Right now, we're not going to use this one for this next technique, but for the overlock one, whether you've got the thin or the thick end, let me get my threads under the presser foot, just like on your sewing machine. And you might want to hold on to them so that as you slide your height compensation tool under the foot, that you don't pull those threads forward. So this is basically what it looks like in the traditional manner. And it's easier to turn the machine on the camera. There you have it. So this little leg basically is right under the length of the presser foot, and the side of it is right against the back side of the presser foot, and then the other ledge is like that backstop in back of the presser foot. Does that help you? Is that what you wanted to see? I think so. Okay, so we're a little bit over time here, so let's move it along. Okay, so, all right, I have got my hem. Now, on this, let me test it first. Let me just grab something and test it, just to make sure. I can just use my sample fabric here for a second. I just want to make sure. And my stitch length, my default stitch length on this is 3.5. But because I'm hemming and it's it's not like polar fleece or sweatshirt fleece, but it's got a little bit of heft to it. I'm going to bring that stitch length up to 3.8, okay? And I'm just going to test it to make sure when I convert the machine over that everything is copacetic and we're all happy. I can pull the stitching out on this. Let me just go to that camera. I'm just testing it just to see what it looks like. pull that out. That stitching looks fine. Okay. And I'm not going to lock the stitch because I don't want it to stay in here and ruin my fabulous little sample. I'll pull that out afterwards. Okay. So here we have our hem. All right. Now, if you want to get yourself figured out for how to position your needles on this, what I do is I turn the hem wrong side up and then look at where my fold is. The other thing that I want to be sure of is that both the left and right needles, actually a center needle on this, but both needles are on the double layer of the hem, because even with a narrow cover stitching, if say my one needle was in the single layer of the fabric, the other one was in the hem with the double layer, that can cause tunneling. And you want to make sure that you don't get tunneling. What's important is that the hem looks good from the outside. And if a tiny bit of the raw edge is exposed beyond where the stitching line is, it's not the end of the world. I have seen hundreds of dollars of t-shirts, the price on them with that raw edge slightly exposed. If you have a lot left, exposed, like a 1/4 inch or something, you could carefully go back with a nice sharp pair of scissors and ever so carefully trim away the excess. So I'm looking, and I think if I keep my fold lined up with the edge of the cover hem table here, I'm going to be in good shape. Now remember, my stitch length right now is on 3.8. So what I'm going to do is get this under. I've got my fold. Now I'm right side up. And again, because we're in cover chain stitch mode, we're going to start with the fabric under the needles. And I'm going to put the presser foot down. And I'm going to stitch up to that pretend side seam. And that seems to be a nice happy length. It looks very nice on the right side. I'm keeping that fold right along the edge. Now, my needles aren't close. They're about 1.5 inches away from this seam and from the hump of the seam allowance. And you can see it through here. I gave this a firm press so that you could see it through there. But what I want to be careful of now is that on knits, the presser foot pressure can distort and push and just kind of bend the seam a little bit. I want to keep that seam nice and straight and even. So I'm going to watch as it comes up, and I'm going to hit needle down because I'm going to stop with the needle down. I'm going to, I've got my knee lift in today, so I can do that, but let's show you with this. I'm going to raise the toe of the foot gently, not too far up, and let that seam relax, okay? Just to keep it nice and straight. And I'm going slowly right now because I might even have to do it a second time. Let me just bring my camera up. I think that's a better angle so that you can see it. Okay, of course now I can't, but that's okay. I'm going to go a few more stitches, and again, I might want to just ever so slightly, I don't raise that foot up the whole way. I'm just raising it enough to lift the toe, let that seam allowance relax. Now, I'm just going to go very slowly. Now, I am stopping right before the hump of that seam allowance. I'm going to, let's go up to the screen. What I'm going to do to compensate to go over those is I'm going to increase my stitch length. It was on 3.8. I'm going to bring it up to 4.1. Now, if your machine's maximum stitch length is 4.0, if your initial stitch length going along the beginning of the hem, say you're on 3.7, you would tick it up to 4.0. And what that's doing is that added length as I go over the hump is going to compensate for those added layers of that. So let's go back to the foot. Okay, you can see my needles are right in front. I do like to stop in cover chain stitch mode with my needles down. If you don't have needle up, needle down, a little button or icon on the screen of your machine or anything else, what you can do is as you stop, just turn the hand wheel and bring the needles down. Then you can lift that presser foot and be pretty sure you're not going to get a skip stitch. So what I'm going to do now is stitch very slowly over the hump, and I'm paying attention to where this is. One more. Okay, I'm over the hump. Now I'm going to bring my stitch length back, whoops, wrong one, back to 3.8 because I don't need to compensate. I'm back to the normal thickness again. Okay, I'm going to raise my presser foot, raise my needles. If I wanted to lock the stitch, if this were a real project, and I should have changed screen, sorry about that. I'm going to lock my stitches. I've got my little locking fork. Cut my needle threads, pull my thread out, and let's take a look under the close-up camera for what this looks like. Oh, and you know what? I forgot to put the hump jumper in there. Okay, all right, so this is going to be good. This will be a quick comparison. I think this is going to go, obviously, a little longer because I forgot my hump jumper. Silly. But we'll consider that I did it on purpose as a before and after. So here it is. Can you see how I got a little bit of distortion on that? So let's stitch right under it and use the hump jumper. I can't believe I did that. I should, but I don't. So you can see, but the stitch length remained even. And that's one thing that is good on that. So let's go back here again. So silly. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me get my locking fork out of the way. I am going to do the exact same thing again, but we're just going to go down right underneath it, okay? And I'm going to keep the fold even with the edge of the presser foot right here so that we can see how even the foot stays. Okay. I'm so busy talking, I'm not paying attention to myself here. Okay, so I'm on 3.8 for my stitch length. That's where I want to be. The toe is approaching that, so I can raise that, let the seam relax and stay straight. I may need to do it a second time. Nothing wrong with that at all. Let it relax. I'm going to stitch very slowly. You can even turn your hand wheel if you're a little bit concerned about you're going over that. Okay, so here is the hump jumper for, I grabbed the wrong one. Here's the hump jumper for cover chain stitch. And as I showed you at the beginning, it's got two different layers. Let's use the thicker end. Now, because I have the needles down, I can raise that foot a little bit higher. Get this underneath I don't have to put it all the way in. I just need it far enough to keep the foot level. And let me just show you. I want to turn it. I'm going to turn on the machine. And I guess I am going to have to turn the camera. Okay. So you can see. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not making anyone dizzy. That the foot is still staying level on the back. It's not tilted at all. Everything is nice and level on there. So let's turn the machine back again. Isn't that a lovely sound? Okay, and let me get this back to where I want you to be able to see. Okay, so now my stitch length is on 3.8. I'm going to bring it back up to 4.1. I usually find, and it depends on how thick the fabric is that you're working on. You may need to only go up 2 ticks. Maybe you need to go up 4 if you're going over something super thick like a sweatshirt fleece or something, maybe even a French terry, something like that. So you want to make sure that you've got that kind of tested ahead of time. So we're on 4.1. Let's go back here. I have got my little hump jumper in here, and you can either, if you're a little bit nervous about going over, stepping on the foot control or the gas, you can hand turn your wheel, but let's just go slowly. And I'm going to hold the hump jumper so it doesn't go flying. Okay, we're over the hump. Now I'm going to bring my stitch length back to the original 3.8. So we're right back to where I started from. And let's get the hump jumper out because we don't need that anymore. We're over the hump, and finish our stitching. Okay, turn my hand wheel, bring those needles all the way up, presser foot up, pull forward with the locking fork, and okay, actually I'm glad I didn't do that on the first one. This is a great comparison. All right, and I apologize for keeping a few minutes later. Okay. Do you see the difference of this? Now, this is without the hump jumper. The stitches jumped a little bit. They're not nice and straight and even. Here we have it with the hump jumper. Look how perfect those stitches are. The line of stitching is perfectly straight, and because I stopped and increased my stitch length just to get over that hump, and it was really only for about 3 stitches, stopped and put it back to normal again, or the beginning length. Look at the perfection of that versus that. I'm so glad I forgot to put it in on the first one. This is a perfect comparison. So you can see how valuable using those tools and understanding why they are important. Sometimes people think, oh, they're just trying to sell me one more little thing. That is the difference. And again, would your non-sewing friends notice that? No. Would your sewing friends notice the second one at the bottom? Absolutely. So that is the beauty of humps and lumps and how to get over them and really maintain a beautiful, beautiful stitch. Are there any questions? I apologize. It's 16 minutes over. I'm sorry I went over a little bit, but I'm so glad I did. Darn it all. That was a perfect comparison. And I didn't do that on purpose, I promise you. But that is the perfect comparison on that. So if you have ideas or things that you want to know and understand, please send me suggestions, because I do want to present things that are going to be helpful for you. And if you're wondering about it, I guarantee you a lot of other people are as well. So please send me your suggestions or questions, And I will either be doing them in a tip clip, depending on the reason. Sometimes I don't do things in Serger Savvy Live is if it requires a lot of different prep steps and things like that, that it takes too long to do without editing live. I can do that in a tip clip and make it a little more efficient for you to watch. So I'm very excited that that happened. I'm so glad that I made that boo-boo. So anyway, again, if you are thinking about a new machine or software, Bernina or Burnett, we have the appreciation coupons, Gail at gailpatrice.com. If you're interested in that trim bin, again, I don't sell it or get a commission on that. That is Barbara at Cutting Edge Serger Designs. And you know what? I think I'll put that in here. Let me just see. Oh, I think I didn't sign in ahead of time. Hang on. Hang on. Okay, so I'm going to put in, this is for the Trim Bin Plus. You've all seen me talk about that. And there's that little added thing. So your little threads and stuff like that and pieces of fabric fall in there. You can keep your clips and pins in here. If you have things like you want to keep a pair of scissors or your tweezers or anything else, you actually have a third segment too. So let me put that in for you. It's Barbara at Cutting Edge Serger Designs.com. So you've got that. Okay. So anyway, okay, let's see. If anyone has any other questions about today, shoot me an email. I tend not to go back to the chat on the actual video. So I'll be happy to answer you though. But thanks for joining me today. I hope that was helpful for everybody, and showing it, I think, in cover stitch as well as overlock mode should be pretty helpful for people. Thanks very much, and I will see you live the second Tuesday of June. I think I should be here. And if I'm not here, what I'll do is I will announce a different day or date for that. But I'm pretty sure. Jacqueline, you said, where do you get the trim bin? I just put that right above your comment, Barbara at cuttingedgesergerdesigns.com. Shoot her an email and she'll get all the information. That is her product. Barbara Goldcorn is in Austin, Texas, very talented, and teaches some classes as well. Oh, Cheryl, I'm glad that answered your question. Great. Okay, you're welcome, Bobby. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the month. I hope it's beautiful wherever you are, and I will see you again either on a tip clip or live next month. Thanks. Take care, everyone.